Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
It is Friday, and all of our guests today, including John Shannon, standing by, brought to you by our title sponsor, Able Auctions, ableauctions.ca. Lots of response in the Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox, unsigned. Oh, pardon me, it's from Buddy the Dog in Surrey. Donnie, just acquiring talent doesn't cut it. It's how you manage the acquisitions and getting the support pieces in place. That's what matters.
Yes.
Good point by Buddy the Dog. The foundation was there. Jim Rutherford has done a better job of building around it than Jim Benning. John Shannon joining us now, NHL analyst, co-host of the Bob McCowan podcast. John, thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
Happy Friday, boys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Canucks with an 11 o'clock press conference. And by the way, John, before I get to you, Rick, we believe it's a 2-year deal now versus 3 years.
Yeah, it could be a 2. I'm not ready to say 2 fully yet, but it could be either 2 or 3 years for Jimmy, John.
Bottom line is he's getting a contract extension. John, just your reaction to that piece of news.
Well, you guys had him on before Christmas. Yeah. So did we. It was pretty evident that something was coming down the pipe. It just wasn't clear when that would happen. I don't think there's any question that Rutherford and Aquilini feel the job isn't finished, and both of them want to see it done. And when you talk about what Jim Rutherford's done, albeit with foundational pieces that Jim Benning put in place, just like it happened for Jim in Pittsburgh, because he didn't draft Sidney Crosby and get him Malkin, trust me. What he's able to do is create structure, create accountability, bring people in that understand how he wants to build a hockey team. You talked about Patrick Alvin. Don't forget Emily Castonguay as well, who I think has had a vital role with the Canucks in doing what has gone properly in the front office for this hockey club. Jim Rutherford's tough. He has a plan. He's not very flexible on the plan. He's demanding and does a very good job of building consensus amongst his own people. And that's why he's getting this extension, in addition to the fact that he's be able to put those building blocks in place that this team is number one in the National Hockey League.
Do you think that, and you mentioned this, do you think he looked at that foundation, basically made up of the 5 Canucks who are going to the All-Star game in Toronto, and said, you know what, I'm older, I don't know if I want to do this, but there's something here. Do you think that was the case with him?
I think that was part of it, Donnie. And I think there were a lot of people, licking their chops to say, I want to crack at the Canucks because of some of the young players that they had. Remember, one of the biggest decisions early on in the Alvin Rutherford administration was, do you keep Bo or do you keep Miller? And, they had to make a decision. And it might have been a decision early on amongst the fan base. It wasn't the most popular. But it has certainly proved to work out very well with the way JT Miller has contributed to this hockey club.
John, the Edmonton Oilers, 12 straight wins. But they're still having a tough time climbing the standings because losing 10 of the first 13. They're still
they're having a tough time climbing the standings against the Vancouver Canucks.
Yes.
I actually was talking to somebody in the Oiler office this morning about last night's game and about what was going on, and they say, man, when is Vancouver going to have their swoon? And that hasn't happened in Vancouver yet. LA's in a funk right now. Vegas is running through a bunch of injury issues. And so the Oilers have really put themselves in a good spot in the Pacific Division, but they can't catch the Canucks. I think at one point in this period of time, in the 12-game streak that the Oilers have, they've basically only caught them by 3 points.
Yeah.
Now, the Kings at 16. They've basically taken back 16 points and are now have passed LA. I think it's probably 14 for the Golden Knights, but for the Canucks it's just 3 because the Canucks have played so well. And not only well at home, but you can't underestimate how important that Eastern road trip was to the long-term success of the hockey club when it comes to playoff position.
Well, the Oilers did pass the Kings last night, and the Canucks are the only team in the NHL that has not lost 3 straight games. Can we take a look at Calgary and Ottawa? Boy, it looks like there's some big names available there, John. Chychrun's name is popping up in Ottawa. You got Tanev, Lindholm. You got a whole bunch of big names there, UFAs. Talk about those 2 teams and what could be happening come deadline time.
Well, and I think you better add Vladimir Tarasenko in Ottawa, too.
Right.
Rick, because he does have a no-move clause that Pierre Dorion, the previous manager, gave him. But, if they could say to Tarasenko that we can try to get you with a team that has a chance to win the Stanley Cup, would you go? He's only on a 1-year deal. It's not for very much money. So that could be a win-win for the player and for the Senators. I'm surprised at the Chychrun discussion that's public. I would not be surprised that the Senators try to sign him to a new deal before they contemplate some trade. He's a pretty good foundational player, and Steve Staios and Dave Poulin now have their work cut out for them, and they have it. They have 6 weeks to figure out what this team is and what they want to do with it long term. When they play as well as they did last night against Montreal, it's tough to criticize that what has been built there, but that may not be the case, and the consistency may not be there like we've seen out of Vancouver.
Talking with John Shannon. John, you work Oilers games. You work their game broadcast. They beat the Kraken last night 4-2. Let's get back to them for a second. 12 straight wins for Edmonton. Are they back to being considered Cup contenders, and how much of this has to do with Chris Knoblauch?
I think they would have been able to return to some level of competitiveness with Jay behind the bench. But there is some magic that Chris Knoblauch and Paul Coffey have brought to this hockey club. And the one thing I would say, we've joked about it. The next time I'm with Chris, I'm going to try to find his pulse. I have never seen a more even-keeled coach in my life than Chris Knoblauch. Nothing seems to bother him. There's no ranting at referees. There's no yelling at his defensemen, or there's pure, simple discussion, very little emotion. And I think that has played a huge part in the Oilers being in a position to say, okay, we're down 2-0. Don't panic, guys. Play the system. It will work. And as you guys both know, you've been around the game as long as I have. It's when you put those principles in place, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Guys, don't panic. Guys, realize, yes, the only score that matters is the one at the end of the game, not the one at the end of the second intermission. And I really think that he's put that in place. They have become a very, very good defensive team in this period of time. 21 goals they've allowed in those 12 games, Don. 21. And it's not just on Stuart Skinner. It's on the forwards, who are really forechecking well and being aggressive and back-checking. And it's on the simple game that Paul Coffey has put in play with the 6 defensemen that play regularly for the Oilers. It really is impressive. I know, we get, if you're a British Columbian, you get tired of hearing about the Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid. You do. And we see it every day on social media. But the reality of this team is they can be a difference maker in the Stanley Cup playoffs now if they continue to play this way.
John, we're in BC. People around here are tired of hearing the Oilers from way back in 1978, 79. Right? It's been a long time.
No. Well, and if not the Oilers and the Maple Leafs, but at least the Oilers won.
Yeah. Well, Leafs in town on Saturday, and Austin Matthews with a hat trick last night in Calgary. Say what you want about the Leafs Vancouver hockey fans, but the hat trick, 37 goals for Austin Matthews. Just quickly, John, what's his gift? I mean, the consistency year after year, goal scoring. What's his gift as a goal scorer?
I don't think we really understand how big he is, and he's and so when he does use his body, it is effective. He's not a collision guy, but he just pushes the guy off the puck very effectively. And I think he has the best shot in hockey. And actually we may be seeing two of the best tomorrow night if you want to put Pettersson and Matthews in that discussion, or Miller and Matthews in that discussion. But Austin Matthews' release is quick. It is accurate. He truly is a superstar. He skates well. He does everything very well. When you look back at what the Maple Leafs did in order to try to get him as the first pick overall, it was a brilliant move by Lou Lamoriello and his crew to be the worst team in hockey for a while.
Yeah, and he's here in Vancouver tomorrow. John,
well, and they'll be fun. I tell you what, Edmonton, Toronto was an absolute treat to watch. Vancouver, Toronto tomorrow night will be an absolute treat to watch. And can you guys imagine, and I've said the same thing at Edmonton media too, but could you imagine a Vancouver-Toronto Stanley Cup final?
Oh.
Yeah.
It would be. And I'm not just talking about the rivalry. I'm talking about the style of hockey. You watch the hockey tomorrow night, it will be so much fun to watch that game.
I don't think we appreciated it enough in '94.
Yeah.
I mean, social media wasn't around. You kind of knew the Canucks were going to win, but a Stanley Cup final. I mean, I don't know what ESPN would feel about that, but
or TSN
here, outstanding.
Well, the thing, guys, and I know I don't want to take too much time. The thing about it is even from '94, both of these teams have really adapted to the way the game is supposed to be played today.
Yeah.
And the amount of speed that both teams use is really impressive. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch that game at Rogers Arena tomorrow night. It is going to be a cool night to be there as part of Hockey Day.
I know you had to move your schedule around to join us at this time, and we appreciate it as always, John. So we'll talk to you next week.
Have a great weekend, guys.
You bet.